Welcome to the Brunch Club, and thank you very much to Peter Llewellyn from MedComms Networking for inviting me today to present to you, on behalf of AMWA, EMWA and ISMAP, the Joint Position Statement on the role of professional medical writers. First, a couple of words about me. My name's Chris Winchester. I did a first degree and DPhil in biochemistry here at Oxford, and I'm now Managing Director of Oxford PharmaGenesis. We're an independently owned, award-winning health science communications consultancy with offices on both sides of the Atlantic, and I'm also involved in Green Templeton College here at Oxford, and I have an honorary research position at the School of Medicine, Pharmacy and Health at Durham University. So, the AMWA-EMWA-ISMPP Joint Position Statement is a bit of a landmark in our profession. It's the first unified position statement on the role of professional medical writers that brings together three leading professional organisations in our industry. AMWA, which is the American Medical Writers Association, EMWA, the European Medical Writers Association, and the International Society for Medical Publication Professionals. So what that means is that the Joint Position Statement describes for the first time a global standard for professional medical writers. And it goes without saying that it replaces previous position statements and guidelines from these participating organisations. So how did we go about it? We actually had representatives from around the world. We had from North America, Art Gertel representing AMWA, Yvonne Yarker representing ISMAP, myself in Europe representing EMWA, and then in Asia Pacific we had Karen Woolley representing ISMAP as well. So it truly gave us a global picture, and together those organisations represent over 6,500 medical communicators around the world. So we're very pleased with this coverage. We set out with some clear objectives for our joint position statement. Actually, the first one is not mentioned here, but to be short, and in fact it's 2 pages, so I would encourage you to read it. But the objectives were to cover not just the medical writers' responsibilities, but just as importantly, what are the responsibilities of authors when they're working with medical writers? Because ultimately it's the authors who take responsibility for the work and the way that it was put together. We also took some time to explain the value that professional medical writing adds to the wider world, in particular to evidence-based medicine. We took some time also to emphasize that medical writers are experts in communicating data and disclosing data, and to describe the guidelines within which we work, so that anyone, authors, clinicians, researchers, peer reviewers, journal editors, industry critics, can see the context in which we work, which is highly thought through. And we referred to up-to-date guidelines and current evidence. Finally, we included an acknowledgement statement that people can use. So here it is. Here's the top of page 1 of the statement. You can see it's quite clear who is endorsing the statement and when it was released in 2017. We also clarified the scope, so you can see the type of publications that are covered, articles, but not just articles, also supplementary content in peer-reviewed journals, and materials for scientific congresses, abstracts, posters, oral presentations. And it's worth mentioning that, as I said, the Joint Position Statement is in line with up-to-date guidelines from a number of other organisations, and we refer the reader to those if they want to find out more. The next section looks at the responsibility of professional medical writers, and we show that professional medical writing support helps authors and research sponsors to disclose research in peer-reviewed journals and scientific congresses in an ethical accurate and timely manner, and the references support that. And we refer to actually the ultimate aim of advancing patient care. We then go on to refer the reader to good publication practice guidelines. There's no need to restate what is a fantastic resource for all of us when we do our work. And the same with the ICMJE recommendations and consort and other guidelines that are available through the Equator Network. We think that, and we show that medical writers have an important role in making sure that authors and research sponsors are aware of their obligations. And we say that medical writers should stay up to date with advances in the field. The next section then looks at responsibilities of authors. And you can see that we cover quite a lot here, but it goes without saying that authors need to meet ICMJE criteria. So they need to give intellectual input right from the beginning, from before writing starts, all through content development, through to final approval. And it's really important that authors understand the importance of acknowledging medical writing support in a transparent manner. And on the next slide, and they may before I move on to the next slide, I just want to mention that authors should also credit anyone who's involved in a publication as an author if they meet ICMJE criteria. And on occasion that can be the case with medical writers, particularly if they're involved in something like a systematic review. So on the next slide we have an example template disclosure statement, and we set out quite clearly the information we think should be included to enable readers of an article to understand how it was put together and what the role of the medical writer was in that process. So you can see that the first thing is to name the medical writer. And we know that there may be quite a large team involved in putting together a publication, but we believe that one person, at least one, should be named who can take responsibility for the support provided to authors in preparing the paper. The next thing I'd like to highlight is that we should provide enough detail about the support to enable the reader to understand what was done. And the sponsor should also be specified and described. Finally, and this is something a little bit new we think, we recommend including and referring back to good publication practice guidelines in the acknowledgements, because many people who read a paper, if they come to the acknowledgements, they may not actually be aware of what medical writing support involves and how much effort we put into doing it in the right way. So with a simple link, then the interested reader can go and find out more. So I think it's time to throw the challenge over to you as listening to this presentation. What can we all do as medical writers and medical communications professionals? Well, I think a great starting point is to read the statement. As I mentioned, it's just 2 pages, it's short, it's concise, it's crisp. And you can find it on the website of any of our 3 organisations. You can also come and attend a presentation at a forthcoming event. So the Joint Position Statement will be presented at the annual meeting of ISMAP in May in the US. It'll be presented in the UK at the EMWA meeting, also in May, and then again in the US at the AMWA meeting. And there'll be other opportunities as well around the world. Then do think about, are there other organisations who should be signing up to endorse this statement? And if so, please feel free to recommend them to us or make the link yourselves. And finally, if your organisation has a publication policy, then we recommend that you review it in light of the Joint Position Statement, refer to it, and maybe include some of the thoughts that we had, including specifying the qualifications of medical writers and the good publication practice that we work under. So, what's been the outcome of all this hard work putting together this statement? It's very gratifying to see that we are having an impact in the wider world. In the first month we had over 10,000 page views across the 3 organisations. We've had publications now in the AMWA journal and in the EMWA journal Medical Writing, which those journals have very kindly made available open access and free of charge. We had some great feedback, we had some great coverage in the Publication Plan LinkedIn group, so thanks to Rick and Ryan and team for that. We've had also coverage in Asia Pacific. We've been covered in the MAP, which is the newsletter for ISMAP. So the word's really getting out there. And of course we can all play our part in doing exactly that. Just drawing to a close here, I want to thank everyone who's been involved in putting together the Joint Position Statement. I've talked already about the 4 members of the Writing Committee, but just as importantly were all those organisational reviewers in the different organisations and those involved in the original statements and guidelines for the 3 organisations that we were able to build on. So many, many thanks to all of them. So my final slide is just to say, here are my details. I'd love to hear what you make of it. Let me know. Do get in touch. You can email me, phone, or perhaps we can meet at a forthcoming meeting of ISMAP, EMWA or similar. So thanks again. Thanks for your attention. And yes, I think it's up to us all now to get the word out about this Joint Position Statement and the great work that we do as a profession. So thank you.